Amazing Spider-Man 170 hit store shelves and spinner racks in July 1977. The same month, Rumors by Fleetwood Mac was the #1 album, and Happy Days ruled the airwaves. Also, a small movie about a galaxy far, far away was in theaters, but more about that later. It was one of two Spider-Man releases that month, the other being Spidey Super Stories Volume 1, number 24, that sees Spider-Man in a glass case of sadness or something. ASM 170 featured classic Captain America villain Dr. Faustus in a nefarious plot to augment a much needed vaccine and leave millions under his hallucinogenic trance. Faustus, who had apparently died in a Captain America 192, details how he cheated death and escaped via secret parachute. Spider-Man is a victim of Faustus' notorious gases at first, but comes to his senses at the end to win the day. Faustus returns in the classic National Force storyline in a Captain America 232 and 236. An interesting note about this issue is that it contains the start of a subplot that is not reconciled until much later. There is an aside from the main story where we see a man who has started renting Aunt May's house. This is the burglar who shot Uncle Ben back in Amazing Fantasy number 15. The reason why is revealed only in Amazing Spider-Man number 200. At the time of the story, Uncle Ben's murder happened roughly 4 years ago, as per the sliding timescale of Earth 616. ASM 170 was written by Len Wein, the comic book writer and editor best known for creating DC Comics Swamp Thing and Marvel Comics Wolverine, and for helping revive the Marvel superhero team, the X-Men, including the co-creation of Nightcrawler, Storm, and Colossus. In the early 1970s, Wein began writing regularly for Marvel Comics. During Wayne's tenure, Harry Osborn and Liz Allen dated and became engaged. J. Jonah Jameson was introduced to his eventual second wife, Marla Madison, and Aunt May suffered a heart attack. Wayne's last story on Amazing Spider-Man was a 5-issue arc, numbers 176 to 180, between Jan and May 1978, featuring the third Green Goblin, who is in actuality Harry Osborn's psychiatrist, Bart Hamilton. By 1978, following an offer to script the Batman feature in Detective Comics, Wein left Marvel to work exclusively at DC Comics as a scriptwriter and editor. We need to talk about Spider-Man of 1977. By this time in his run, Spider-Man was sort of in a weird place. He was now less of the nerdy outcast he had started out to be. He had become positively hip and plugged into the scene. This was the sense of what the audience wanted at the time. However, in this issue, the web-slinger does not remove his costume or mask at all, so we never really get to see Peter Parker as a civilian. In 1977, the Spider-Man series was in the hands of Ross Andru, whose work can be a bit hit or miss. Marvel art director John Romita loved Ross's work, especially shots of Manhattan as Spidey swung around. But even in this issue, there are some panels where Spider-Man looks quite pint-sized compared to Faustus' goons. 616 Spider-Man is about 5'10". Ross' work on the series could be something of an acquired taste, but he was the flavor of Spider-Man in this era, having been on the book consistently since issue 125 and with no sign that he was departing anytime soon. Complementing Ross' work was Mike Esposito, who throughout the 1970s inked virtually every major Marvel penciler on virtually every major Marvel title, the Avengers to X-Men. He was also a childhood friend of Ross Andru, and the Andru Esposito drawing of Wonder Woman appears on a 2006 US stamp. Rounding out the list is Frank Giacoia, one of the company's preeminent names. He worked on virtually every title at one time or another. Giacoia inked the first appearance of the Punisher in The Amazing Spider-Man 129. Frank is listed as one of the 20 greatest inkers in American comic books. Historians at the retailer Atlas Comics list Giacoia at number 5. By the mid-70s, Marvel had fully embraced the marketing concept of selling multiple comic books packaged in a sealed plastic bag to a customer base in supermarkets and department store chains, which comic books could hardly reach otherwise. These are known as Marvel multi-packs. Marvel, accordingly, also adjusted the price of its Marvel multi-packs. The last time this happened was between July and August 1976, when the price went up from 3 for 74 cents to 3 for 89 cents. And following an increase of an individual issue price from 25 cents to 30 cents. There was a limited distribution 35-cent cover price variant for this issue. I have the apparently more rare 30-cent issue, but the quality is so poor that any perceived value has gone out the window. In 1977, the average print run of a superhero Marvel comic was generally between 150,000 and 250,000 issues per month. Marvel was generating sales of over 14.6 million, which is roughly 76 million today, with only 16 titles. DC, by comparison, was making 8 million, roughly 41.5 million, with 18 titles. However, even with numbers like these, Marvel was facing headwinds. In 1975, Marvel was the top comics company, but dwindling retail outlets and rising newsprint costs threatened it and the entire industry. During this time, Marvel and the Iowa-based Register and Tribune Syndicate launched a number of syndicated comic strips, including this issue. None of the other strips lasted past 1982. There was even talk of shuttering the company if conditions didn't improve. However, just a year earlier, 1976, Marvel editor and writer Roy Thomas persuaded his skeptical bosses, including Stan Lee, to gamble on a 6-issue adaptation of a new George Lucas movie scheduled to be released in 1977. "The Star Wars people found me," Mr. Thomas said in a phone interview, "and I was open to the idea. I like space opera. I'd always enjoyed Planet Comics as a kid." By the time the movie was released in May 1977, Marvel had already published 2 issues of its 6-part adaptation, and it immediately became the best-selling title. I found mint or near mint issues for sale on mycomicshop.com for as high as $75. I found mint or near mint issues for sale on mycomicshop.com for as high as $75. On Heritage Auctions for $149, keycollectorcomics.com for $195, and I found one issue on eBay selling for $2,150. I do not recommend dropping that much on this issue. When we get down to it, this one-and-done encounter with Faustus isn't the most engaging storyline, to be honest. Logically, why would Faustus need a massive laser cannon to break into a secret lab when it looks like a plain concrete wall? Also, how did he know Spider-Man would be there, allowing Faustus to use him and get around security? How would he have gotten in otherwise? Also, why are his goons in incredibly ugly get-ups? There are 2 asides in this issue, the one we discussed earlier and another featuring Mary Jane Watson and Liz Allen wedding dress shopping. This gives us a nice outlook at MJ's attitudes towards weddings and potentially getting engaged to Peter Parker, which we know took 2 tries. But eventually, Ross makes good use of the story given to him. The limited action is all in a confined space, so we don't get any glamour shots of Spidey across Manhattan. But we are treated to a few good action panels with both good and bad guys getting their licks in. Although why Spider-Man stuck the vial of his hallucinogenic formula on the ceiling for a hot minute is anyone's guess. In the end, how did the police arrive? I assume the dismantled and then repaired alarm system had something to do with it. Still, the final panel literally ties it all together. Does Peter carry around a Sharpie with him wherever he goes? And of course, no video about the Bronze Age of Marvel Comics would be complete without discussing the advertisements. No less than 15 full pages of ads. Everything from the classic bodybuilding courses to fishing lures by Nearest discount sales, which is a now Edge Loft and Tower condos. Spalding basketball featuring Rick Barry and Dr. J. 1-inch square genuine Texas ranch land for $2, and even an ad for used comics from my neck of the woods, which also happens to now be condos. Marvel itself had 4 full-page spreads selling subscription to fan clubs, flying Spider-Man toys, and their self-produced fan magazine, Foom. Following the canceled Marvel Mania and preceding Marvel Age, Foom ran for 22 quarterly issues between February 1973 and fall 1978. It was initially designed and edited by comic book writer Jim Steranko. Foom is an acronym for Friends of Old Marvel. Imagine getting your fan magazine in an envelope that looked like this. Then something amazing happened. I spotted an ad for Clint's Comics in Kansas City. I decided to look up the address and see what it is today. And as of 2023, it is still a Clint's Comics. Shout out to you guys. Go check them out on 3941 Main Street in Kansas City. One of your ads just paid off almost 50 years later. However, the real tasty treat appears on page 27, where we are graced with the wildly bizarre Hostess ads featuring Iron Man called Rust Be My Destiny. You see, during the 70s and 80s, Hostess reached out to Marvel as well as DC to compile a series of original comics featuring their iconic heroes in an effort to market their pastries. What resulted were some of the silliest one-page comic stories fans will ever find. These ads are so famous, in fact, that they've been spoofed in popular media. It is a wild advertising campaign, and these are just some of the silliest ads that have ever found their way into the pages of Marvel Comics. Thanks for checking out the video. If you want to see more, please hit like and subscribe. If you have suggestions for comics you want me to deep dive into, please leave a comment below. Please help and support real artists. AI is great for a lot of things, but not for creating art and replacing artists. Thank you.